Hello, this is Mish Monk with a new podcast. This podcast is unequivocally stating that Harry is a 21st century prince. And I'm going to tell you why. By turning the spotlight first on Betty's power over her queendom and the so-called preparation work required to rule the roost. So, what power does Betty hold? She can't make and pass legislation. That's the Parliament's job, but she approves bills before they become law. She gives what's known as royal assent. And the last time a monarch didn't grant royal assent was in 1708. She also opens and can dissolve the Parliament. Most government officials in the UK are chosen through a vote, but the Queen can appoint ministers to the Crown, including advisors and cabinet officials, frequently choosing from the existing members of Parliament. The Prime Minister has the power to appoint ministers to the Crown as well. If Betty sees fit, she can grant a royal pardon to anyone convicted of a crime and reduce prison sentences. She's done both. I also must thank Betty for my UK passport, issued on her behalf and in her name, as I also must acknowledge her power to withdraw it. She's also the Commander-in-Chief of the UK's entire military force, and all British soldiers must swear an oath to her before officially joining the armed forces. Yes, she can command, but she can also delegate, thankfully. She assigns the position of Commander-in-Chief most commonly to the Prime Minister or the Secretary of State for Defense. Betty can also declare war on other countries and is the only one in the UK with such power, but only if it's all-out warfare. And Parliament, the Prime Minister, and the rest of the government would have to permit it. By the way, her father declared war on Nazi Germany in 1939. If she so chooses, Betty could fire everyone in the House of Commons and hold a new election of entirely new members. However, the government itself, including the Prime Minister and Cabinet, would be unaffected. Most assuredly, this would be unpopular with the citizens and hasn't been done by a monarch since 1830. The Queen can personally bestow honors on individuals who have proven themselves to be exemplary citizens of the UK, toss in a few parades, walk through her favorite charities, host dinners, tour her waning empire, and perform the royal wave on the balcony, and that about wraps up the duties of Betty. So here are a few questions that I have on behalf of Harry. Given these powers that she has, why was Harry's towing the line so important to these must-do items by the monarch? He can't do any of them unless he's on the throne. Why did Harry need to be punished when it seems he was towing the line with his current duties? Why is Harry's help needed for his brother when it seems that all the hullabaloo is not about Harry helping his father, but Harry helping Willie? Okay. On that note, we've been hearing about Willie preparing to be the king. Again, you don't hear constantly about Charles preparing, although he's a bit long in the tooth and should know the ins and outs by now of being kingly. So what is this multi-year intense preparation all about? And again, we're going to connect these dots to Harry. According to People's Magazine in 2019, apparently they were also wondering about this preparation. And so they wrote their little piece. And here's a quote. Kate Middleton and Prince William stole the spotlight at Queen Elizabeth's Buckingham Palace last week, making it clear that they are ready for the next step on their royal journey. They are being prepared every day, says the royal biographer Ingrid Seward. There was no school for princesses when Princess Diana was around, and there is no school today for the monarchs. They learn by observing and by experience. People make much of William giving the big speeches, but Kate is there too, asking questions of presidents and their wives. These things are easier when they are side by side. The monarchy is approaching a very challenging period of change, says royal historian Robert Lacey. Charles is going to have his work cut out coping with the transitions. It's good to have that reassurance in the new generation that there is someone stepping up to the plate. Okay, so do you see how the mainstream media judges the success of the training? They're talking about Kate and William stealing the spotlight, giving speeches, Kate's ability to talk to presidents and their wives. In other words, it seems like you just have to look the part and be gracious hosts. Then we have an article from Harper's Bazaar in 2017, again talking about the preparation for being a king. So, in their article, they say, William started training at a young age under the guidance of his grandmother, the Queen. There has always been a special closeness between William and the Queen, and she has taken a particular interest in him. Robert Lacey, royal historian and liaison to Netflix, The Crown. When William became a teenager, she would have him at Windsor Castle and would open the state boxes and guide him through the papers. It was William's constitutional education. And starting in 2009, William reportedly underwent an intensive 2-year training program designed by the Queen and his father, Prince Charles, and this is according to the Daily Mail. It was said to include working with different departments in the British government, private lessons from constitutional experts, and briefings with high-profile figures like, that time, Prime Minister Sir John Major. So through the years, the prince has also taken up more royal responsibilities in the public eye, such as solo tours around the world and promoting charity work. He stepped down from his role as air ambulance pilot in order to take up more royal duties. He's also absorbed some of the responsibilities and engagements from his grandfather, who retired. And in this same article, they say, according to his brother, Prince Harry, he may plan on taking a contemporary approach. We're involved in modernizing the British monarchy, Harry said earlier this year. We're not doing this for ourselves, but for the greater good of the people, Harry added, and hinted that he and his brother might not want the crown at all. Is there any one of the royal family who wants to be king or queen? I don't think so, but we will carry out our duties at the right time. And that's a quote from Harry. So from the beginning, the firstborn was taken aside and given special treatment. That left Harry to find his own way. I'm sure Betty's handlers didn't let Harry go too far astray, but although Harry gave voice to his intentions, they so dismissed it that then they had the nerve to act blindsided by something he had already said he was going to do. And supposedly, his brother was going to join him in that. They took Harry for granted at their own detriment. But all the preparation in the world couldn't predict what's happening now, a pandemic. And the consequences of COVID is still ongoing as we see Betty sidelined along with Charles, which gives Willie an early opportunity to be the picture of a healthy monarch. This is where optics matter more than substance. Vulnerability in the dynasty is not a pretty picture. It doesn't fit the myth of the long-standing, indomitable Windsor house. And this is where I expect the firm's puppeteers will do their best to push for Harry's return to help out the family. But Harry is nobody's fool. He had his escape plan in place and was making moves like a boss. CEO Harry hit the ground running when he went to Canada first and then California, while the zookeepers were running around, wringing their hands and whining. With every deal he signs and every endeavor he's committed to, the gap widens between Harry and that throne, or between Harry and Willie. And while William caved to the pressure and tradition of his position, he's now entangled. And in about 10 years, George will get the same treatment because his father will make sure there are no defections in his family, and Charlotte and Louis will have to be the rebels and run off to California to join Archie. So while Willie is otherwise handcuffed, Harry can do what his father intended with a slimmed down monarchy. He can still be a philanthropist without being a financial burden to the British taxpayers. And in a few minutes, you'll see why Harry has a platform that is not only timely, but effective given the world stage. The United Nations has identified 22 global issues, and just eyeballing the list, I can pull out the ones that I know without much research that Harry actively has been involved with. And for all I know, he's been involved in all 22. But this information is on the United Nations website. So the first one, and I don't think they're listed by priority, it's Africa. From promoting the development of democratic institutions to the establishment of peace between warring nations, the UN is present on the ground supporting economic and social development and the promotion and protection of human rights. And we know Harry loves Africa. He has been there from a young age, and he's still working with several charities. AIDS and HIV awareness. Children, the state of children, millions of children are denied a fair chance for no reason other than the country, gender, or circumstances into which they are born. Climate change. Democracy is considered a universally recognized ideal and is one of the core values and principles of the United Nations. Remember Harry talking about how important it is to vote. Democratic ideals. Ending poverty. 1 in 10 people in developing regions still live on less than $1.90 US dollars a day. Imagine that. $1.90, 1 in 10 people in developing regions. That's the international agreed poverty line, and millions of others live on slightly more than this daily amount. Harry has volunteered in programs that feed the less fortunate, and we've seen him at work. Gender equality. Also, saving succeeding generations from the scourge of war was the main motivation for creating the United Nations, whose founders lived through the devastation of 2 world wars. We know Harry's continuing his mother's legacy for the removal of landmines. As youth are increasingly demanding more just and equitable and progressive opportunities and solutions in their societies, the need to address the multifaceted challenges faced by young people, such as access to education, health, employment, and gender equality, have become more pressing than ever. And again, we've seen Harry in this environment. Harry has been in tune with what are the world's pressing needs for his platform. And now with the launch of Archewell, a Harry and Meghan philanthropic creation, the limits of his reach and participation are no longer a hindrance. That's on the global side. What are the top issues closer to his home in the UK? September 2020, The Telegraph made such a list. And the top issues that they identified was the aging population in the UK. Because according to the latest statistics from Age UK, there are now nearly 12 million people aged over 65 in Britain. That means the state pension bill is set to rise rapidly, while growing numbers of elderly people will have an impact on the NHS and social care provision. And a decline in the working population means a drop in tax revenue to fund all of this. Let's add COVID, untimely deaths, and long-term illnesses to that population. And you can see how it magnifies what is already in place. Financial markets. It's estimated that almost a third of all investment-grade securities now have negative yields. and more than $10 trillion of global money is earning negative returns. Again, add COVID-related recession, and it's going to wreak havoc. The UK government is in their 1 year of their 25-year plan to protect and improve the environment. The initiative began with the 5 pennies plastic bag charge. But next up, reducing carbon emissions, protecting the UK countryside, building resilience against extreme weather associated with climate change, and leading international action to protect endangered species is on the table. Again, we know that Harry has been working with climate change, and it's a big part of his efforts. Also, future-proofing society, investing in science and tech parks, mainly in the north. Decreasing homelessness, the adult families having to share homes because of housing availability has trebled. The UK is definitely in a stage of transition, with upheavals in society's way of life. And I feel that uncertainty breeds discontent. CNN business article says Britain is in a recession. We know that. Double the percentage that we've seen in other G7 countries, which is all fluid because Europe, including the UK, is being hit with a second COVID wave. But further, the UK has slowed down the Brexit negotiations. And this happened even before COVID. So that the UK government has so far failed to replicate most of the trade deals between the EU and third countries that will no longer benefit British exporters at the end of 2020. And we're in late October. And another bleak outlook regarding post-Brexit is funding for research and science initiatives. Nature.com states that relating matters regarding immigration visas, funding dollars, clinical trial standards for the UK versus EU, lab supplies, and status of existing research centers have not been addressed. We know Harry's projects include and is on point for tackling a lot of the global crises, but the crisis for the UK is at the government's feet. This is where the media, and I feel the collusion with the firm, keep Harry and Meghan in the news with nonsense articles and headlines to dilute the craptastic reality of the government's failings and the monarchy's vulnerability. And in the face of contractions of income, more citizens are going to rely on the government to help with shelter, food, and basic standards of living. A monarchy who lives lavishly off the taxpayers' shrinking tax base in exchange for grand speeches and cutting ribbons will or should be looked at as frivolous and so out of touch. Read the room, people. Not that Harry would have foreseen these dire conditions, but he understood the need to do real work and not play at being a prince. He didn't take his privilege for granted and willfully use it to avoid paying for the Frogmore renovations, hiring and paying for his own security, declining any financial assistance from Charles, and as a reminder, donating to charity the excess money from the wedding. So look at Harry's initiative as a young prince versus his uncle Andrew's attitude with his royal privileges, he's more of a threat to the monarchy than Harry's independence. They, meaning the firm and the media, are going to pay the price for the long-term demonization of Harry. Now, they're trying to use guilt to make him return. They're trying to use rage. They're trying to use shame that he hasn't returned. COVID or no COVID. Betty's heart breaking or not. The firm's all or nothing demand of Harry was stupid and narrow-minded. It's a new century. It's a new era, a new landscape where the audience, which are the British citizens, aren't easily duped by the royal brand of cheerleaders. I do hope Betty matches her mother's tenacious lifespan, because the mother died at 102 years old. And I want Betty to last that long, or even longer. At least another 10 years, right? So the more time spent on the throne solidifies Harry's independence and separation from the royal trappings. Because this would push Willie probably into his maybe 60s or 70s, because you got to leave space for Charles having the throne. And thanks to their great health care, he won't see the throne anytime soon, barring any untimely misfortune. By then, George will be reeled in, and the hand-wringing over Harry would be a thing of the past, or only dredged up by the desperate royal media and their royal history experts. Some in the news say that the monarchy is relevant as a keeper of history and a connection for the country to a single identity. I can rip that statement apart, and that would be quite delicious. But I'll close with a reminder that Prince Harry has transformed his role into one of relevancy and as a model for an out-of-touch institution. He had to step out on his belief that there was more to life than the gilded cage, that his family's health and happiness was the priority over senior royal demands, that he can be a people's prince and be of service to the world and its issues, like his mother showed him was possible. This is Mish Monk, signing out.